to begin with.
I'll give you another angle on that. Like, I'll play devil's advocate for a second for the orgs, because one of the reasons why the orgs themselves have gotten themselves in a really tough position is I actually know most of the orgs in Western League of Legends, and I can tell you a lot of the really successful ones, basically the owner of the entire org is just playing general manager himself, whether he has someone else in that role. And by the way, it's not even like he's claiming like Jack Etienne doesn't claim he has like the best eye test in the world. He's just doing what is his due diligence for what that role used to be, as in like might literally ask someone like me in an off-season, what do you think of this player? Or was there anyone good I should look at? And then what happens is he collects a bunch of opinions like that. He looks at, makes a little short list of names he's going to target. And then he sees who he can get relative to, you know, is the deal worth it? Is it not? So that's not terrible. Like, it'll get you like some decent results. But in that kind of setting, like, the real problem is this. If we'd have known, like this tone of this conversation we were going in now, if we'd have known at the beginning of LCS, first of all, it's going to be here in 10 years, but even more, the money's going to be way more. It's going to be like, you would have just at the beginning started to put in place the staff you need now. But the problem is they're scrambling after the fact. So I can tell you from working in Counter-Strike recently and trying to get a lot of these teams to like upgrade to better players. The real problem isn't that the players aren't there or the money isn't there. It's that they don't have like general managers who are what role would be in sports. Like the general manager in a sports team is nearly always a lifer who has been in that game as a pro or executive scout his whole life. That's why his eye test is unbelievable. And he can literally say, this star player, this like draft pick, I'm literally gonna put my career on this. Like, I'll get fired if I fail. Because the idea is like he is an expert at that. Whereas, as you're saying here, Malaclips, like there are so few people even with like the skills to do the scouting. Like at the moment they have to. I know the dark side of this is when people literally do just see who's popular on Reddit and recruit them. But that's actually in some ways just the extreme version of what they're all doing. Like I don't mean to sound harsh to people, but even the best orgs are sort of doing some, like for example, there are sometimes they might even sign the right player, but for the wrong reasons. You know, like they'll get some legendary player, but they just don't know his style of play. I would even say, by the way, like Corby to TSM was that to me. It's like you didn't know who you recruited. You thought it was a different guy. He was a good player, but not the player you wanted. Apparently, you know. What do you think on this topic? Because a lot of the GMs and teams basically are like, it's more the general part of the equation, as in like they work in all of esports, or they come from another game even, or they're just a staff member. Like they're not like a true general manager who's like, here's my vision, and you know, in 2 years I want the jungle position. Like they're not doing that shit.
This goes to like a progressing esports as a scene and giving people room to develop and move up in the scene. There's a lot of coaches right now that need to move into general manager positions that I do think have the ability to be good general managers, because I'm not touting my name, for instance, but I'm just going to put myself out there, right? I have proven to be able to scout. I'm a proven analyst. I'm a proven theory crafter. I'm a proven coach. So I have the litmus test to be able to look at players and look at the skill sets that are necessary to develop good players at this point. Also from learning from all the mistakes and all the fuck-ups I've made already, I have a good idea of what a general manager needs to do. And I can name 10 coaches right now across the West that I think should move up to general manager positions. And then you have players who are approaching retirement. Maurice is, you know, in that position, who need to be given that transitionary role towards coaching. And this is the next step. This is the next era that we need to move into. We have coaches that need to move to GMs. We have players that need to move to coaches.
Yeah. No, I mean, it is a way. I think the hiring process for GMs is kind of weird. And as you put it, like that owners kind of play like GMs to a certain extent is actually true. I think some GMs that are not necessarily league, like didn't come out of the league scene and have been hired externally, are actually doing a decent job, like for the position it will be put in. But I do think that it makes more sense to have someone endemic to the scene to actually really partake in that general manager position, because in the end it will drive the scene forward, because you will have a more qualitative argument for the players that you're hiring and the coaches that you're hiring, because you have more knowledge. So I think the GM position in league, I mean, it should be trusted more upon the people that are within the scene, and should be less trusted to the people that can kind of have this business acumen, if that makes sense. Because it is I think league is not that complicated. You only have to look at the budget. You have to be like, okay, we have let's say we have 1.2 million this year. Okay, so how I'm going to spend it? I'm going to try for these players to offer them this much. It's not rocket science. It's not like you have to have so many moving pieces. For example, in the NBA, you have to think about the draft picks. You have to think about the player development. About you have to think about how I'm gonna hire, which hire I'm gonna have in terms of the assistant, bottom assistant coaches, to develop one of those players. Just have them specifically be for that person. That rarely happens. That infrastructure is not that deep. It's legitimately you want to have a good coach, you want to have a good assistant coach, potentially a good analyst, and a good team manager. And that's usually the circumference of how far it actually balloons for a staff. Sometimes you have position coaches, so that you may actually have 11 people that you hired in the end, or 10 people they had. In traditional sports, that may actually be 20 to 30 to 40 people that he hired. So it goes way deeper. So the qualifications have to be a bit more deeper in that. And even those people are usually endemic to the scene. So I do think, as you're saying, it would make more sense to move more coaches and more players up to those GM positions and have them partake in that decision-making. Because, again, it can't be, and I don't believe it to be that hard to just have a budget and run it properly. It can't be that hard.
It's not. It's really not. I know about some of the business stuff that GMs get tied into, and I just question sometimes, why do they need to be involved in that?
Yeah,
why
decision making, and they're just listening in the end. They're just listening. They're
exactly. They're just listening. They're partaking in these meetings, but they're not your GMs should be actively involved with the team day in and day out. They should be in the trenches. They need to be.
They should be the end all be all too, because we've seen this in The Last Dance too, to a certain extent. Obviously Jerry Reinsdorf kind of reflected with Jerry Krause, but it's not if Jerry Krause said something, it was going to happen. I think in league, the owners, despite the fact that they actually they shouldn't partake as much, they somehow do. And the GM should actually be running that specific part of the scene, and they should be running that league department. But then you have another CEO or a CGO above them, chief gaming officer. We like to have it. Then we have we have someone that runs the LoL department. Then we have a CGO. Then we have a CEO. Then we have an owner. And despite that, despite having 3-4 hires in between, you're still having the decision making be from the top down, from the very top, individually. And I think that, so the GM position has to be valued high in order for the process to be easier, I would suppose.
Like you're mentioning, and I'll toss the shot out there. There's some owners or people in executive positions in some orgs that I just feel are just living vivacious dreams through being able to manage a pro video game team. I do get that sense.
It's a Chinese concept, no?
Is it?
Yeah, in China, it's apparently pretty popular to just have the son of a billionaire run the esports department.
Oh yes, true.
Oh yeah, that's true. Well, are they actually living vivaciously through it, or are they actually trying to run it properly as the owner and letting the people do the proper stuff?
In the beginning, it was definitely just.
It was the plaything to start with. Yeah, maybe now it's legit. No, I think you're right though. By the way, that's. Listen, aside from the fact that it's true, this position to general manager wasn't developed and didn't tend to be endemic people that would be much better. The sense was from when some of the CEO guys I know of Malaclips, it was like this. It's listen, it's my fucking org that I'm wasting all the millions on. I'll pick the players. That really was sort of the logic. They were even though that's kind of a mad theory, because what you should be thinking is, it's my org, I got the money, so that's why I hired this guy to pick the players. All we need is just that one step on the line. It's the same logic. You just put a guy in the middle, because basically, the best example ever, this is why it's perfect that we're doing this show now, is TSM, because they've just done it again, guys. Their team came into playoffs in rough shape. Reggie did whatever fucking magic he does behind the scenes. They won domestically and then just failed mega bad internationally, this is why this whole massive topic is so difficult to discuss, because within me criticizing TSM at Worlds, I can't 100% criticize Reginald's approach domestically, because it did win in the championship.
Yeah, it did work.
So the point is, it's not, there's no perfect black and white, this is right, this is wrong, but it's I'm sure even Reginald...
Tendencies.
Yeah, I know from even interviewing him in the past, I know he does know that can't be the long-term solution. The long-term solution can't be, when things go wrong, to just sort of step in, short-circuit what your current coaches are doing and say, right, fuck it, but then think that winning LCS is enough. So he knows it isn't, but he's gotten stuck in the same cycle again, and he's done it a bunch of times. So like, if that's a good example of someone who obviously like knows the game to some degree, it also shows the limitations of doing that approach. So like, eventually, it's going to have to be that you have a real GM, and he gets fired if you fail after a few years, but gets the power to do it, and that way you can justify.
Gets the power to do it for 2 to 3 years. Like, have it be the longer term process. That's also another issue, that like that whole thing of like, I mean, they don't, like, no one thinks about like hiring a GM for 2-3 years and just be trusting him. Like, this happens rarely, and if it does happen, it's more or less that he's on a short leash, and that shouldn't that cannot be. Like, I don't know why the owner still, and I think in League it's actually like a real issue. I mean, I would be lying if I said it wasn't, that the owners take so much pride in trying to run the organization like on a really basic level, because like, there's so many other things right now that so many organizations have to be careful. They have to think about it's like there's so many departments below. That's like, it's obviously social media department at this point. Then you have the legal department. Then you have like HR department. There's so many departments that they're running across, and then all the games in between. So for some reason, they still try to focus on like one specific game and try to run it completely for no reason, but maybe potentially their own ego or their own inability to actually trust someone else. It's probably also like trust issues that they're like, okay, it's my money. I don't want to have anyone else like burn it for me, you know, like, so. But and the whole thing, and then again, is like the issue that I don't understand. It's like the VC capital that is behind those organizations, and every single organization has it at this point. Maybe besides Schalke, I think, because Schalke is sponsored by basically their mother org. Like, that in itself should actually absolve them of the responsibility to have to run it like for themselves. They can actually trust other people to burn the money that someone else is paying them. They don't have, it's not their own money anymore. It's like they have a very own stake in the organization, but they know if it's run okay, if it's decent, and it stays in the LCS, and they don't run 10th place 5 times in a row, they're gonna be fine. The investment is fine. That's I guess the essence of what I don't understand. Jesus Christ, just trust the people. It's not your money anymore. Give it over.
I can talk about this from an outside perspective, from outside of esports, because before esports, I worked in the restaurant industry. So, and I've dealt with, and in the restaurant industry, so there's 2 things to talk about with that. One, you have people in the front of the house and the back of the house. You have the people that run the kitchen, you have the people that run the rest of the business, the front-facing business. And a lot of restaurants, what happens is you have very distinct styles of one that is owned by the back of the house and one that's owned by people that run the front of the house. And what happens so often is you have the people who own a business that are running the front of the house go and try to fuck with the shit in the back of the house. And you have a lot of the chefs that go and try to do stuff with the menus and all that in the front of the house, and they don't know what they're doing. You know, it's violating your own hierarchy because you just don't have the skill set and the knowledge and the trust in someone to do that. And this comes down to creating and facilitating partnerships with the people that you're entrusting to run these things. And like you said, that's part of that is actually having these people on for 2 or 3 years that they're not thinking at the back of their mind, because they know how their contract is written, I can be cut at any minute. Because that's the case, by the way. I could be told right now, like I could get a text right now and be told, hey, in 2 weeks you're off contract. I could be told that. Yeah, everyone is like that, by the way.
Yeah.
And for a lot of staff, it's usually yearly contracts. There's probably only a very few coaches that get 2 or 3 year deals, and there's very few coaches that those deals are guaranteed and that they're not able to be cut in 2 weeks. So there's a job security issue, and so people are going to appease the people above them.